So I just beat Okami on the PS4 and I wanted to talk about it. Okami is a game that originally was released on the PS2 and then later would come out on the Wii, the PS3, the PS4, and now most recently the Switch. It would also then get a sequel called Okami Den on the DS, which is garbage in my opinion, but we'll talk about that on a later day. But for now, Okami. Okami is the story of the sun god Amaterasu, who takes the form of a wolf in this case. And someone has broken the seal that previously protected the town and the world from this monster known as Orochi. And now that Orochi has awoken to its power once again and is terrorizing the village and the world, Amaterasu wakes from her sleep and must gain her powers back. She has lost her powers due to number one, being defeated, but number two, the fact that people don't pray to the gods anymore. Whether they're too busy, they don't think about it, or they just don't believe in them, the lack of prayer and the lack of belief in the gods has ultimately hindered and weakened Amaterasu. And she's also lost all of her 13 brush techniques. And the game utilizes this system where you hold down one of the buttons and you can paint with a brush on the screen, and you can do a number of things like bloom and water spout and such, where you use these techniques to interact with the world and even fight enemies. These brush techniques are given to you by one of the 13 animals in the zodiac, be it the cat walk with the cat, the power slash with the mouse, or rejuvenation with the dragon. Okami is very interesting in its presentation also because it is based and centered around Japanese watercolor paintings, I believe, and it's extremely beautiful. And when I remember when it originally came out on the PS2, I was blown away by the way it looked. I had never played a game like that before. I had never played a game that looked like that or that played that way, and it really, really stuck with me that I replayed it almost to the end. And then I later bought it for the PS3, beat it, and then later bought it again for the PS4. And I'm gonna tell you, if I thought it was beautiful back on my with the PS2 and the graphics not being what they are today, the HD remake, you really get to see how nice and crisp everything looks, and it's just brings back so many memories, and it's so beautiful. And Okami really is one of a kind in the way it plays. I mean, you have 3 different types of weapons you can use. You have the sword, the beads, or the disc, I think it's called. The disc is close combat, fairly fast. It's kind of just your standard weapon. The beads don't do as much damage as the other items, but you can hit things from a distance, and you can hit them multiple times in a row. The disc might do something like 5 damage, however the beads might only do 1 damage, but since they hit multiple times, you might still end up with 5 damage because it managed to hit 5 separate times. The sword, on the other hand, you don't get until a little bit later in the game, your first sword, and it is very slow, but it's very powerful. Personally, I don't like using the sword, but what have you. The whole point of Okami is to venture around the world and inevitably, once that you get to the end of the game, defeat the great evil. Orochi, as I've mentioned, is the main point of the game, and fairly early on I feel like you will actually end up fighting him. And if you're anything like me, you might think, wow, is that the end of the game? Because as far as you knew, Orochi was the big bad. But once you defeat Orochi, more things will happen. Not going to spoil the game, of course, but Orochi is just a stepping stone. It is part of a greater plot. There are probably about 3 or 4 big bads in the game. There are multiple smaller bosses, but of the big bads, there are about 3 or 4, depending on if you're going to count the final boss or not. And it is just extremely fun game to play. There's tons of little things for you to do around the world, racing the delivery men or getting the optional brush techniques or what have you. The combat's also very interesting. It's very fun to play as a dog. It sounds very strange to say that, but it's very fun to play as a dog. And when you're running around and you're jumping and you're using your brush techniques in battle, you really have to figure out what's going on. I will admit that sometimes it can get very annoying. It's not super repetitive because you really don't have to fight anything. You don't gain levels or anything like that. But if you're gonna fight monsters, you're really doing it either for demon fangs to get them in your monster book or to get money. Otherwise, there's really no reason to fight just regular monsters. I never really did. In fact, upon my second playthrough in the game, I just kind of run through it. I don't fight any of the monsters unless it's for a specific quest I'm doing. There's no point, you know? It's absolutely just pointless to fight the monster. So if you don't want to, you don't have to. But most of the monsters do have a specific way you should be fighting them. You don't have to, especially if you restart the game. You will have a number of things to start with that you did not previously, being a lot of the stronger weapons, your money, your demon fangs, some of your artifacts, a lot of those things. So, you know, you can equip an extremely strong weapon and just one-shot a lot of the beginning monsters, where previously you could not do that. So you don't really have to fight them the suggested way. It's just, it'll be easier if you can utilize your brush techniques to defeat them. Otherwise, you might be scrambling and barely damaging them. Some monsters don't take damage unless there's you defeat them a certain way. You know, if it's the certain elemental wheel-looking monsters or the more bull orcish monsters that have a mask on, you cannot defeat them normal means. You have to utilize brush techniques or get behind them or do a certain thing before they will become vulnerable enough for you to defeat them. So I guess one of the negatives you could say is that sometimes the encounters can be extremely tedious and it can take a long time to do anything, but that really only applies when you're choosing to fight the monsters, because 90% of the time you actually will not have to fight them. Yes, there are some mandatory fights in the game, but generally speaking, you don't have to fight every monster you come in contact with. So, and even if you get into a battle, you can attack the certain glowing spot in the battlefield to then jump out of. It's essentially an escape tunnel pod thing that you can jump out of, and then you exit the battle. The monster will be right behind you, so you can re-encounter it, but you can pretty much escape as many times as possible as long as you can break through that little glowing spot in the battlefield. I thought the plot was pretty interesting. Of course, I won't be going too much into it because of spoilers, but I thought the plot was very interesting, even though I did think Orochi was going to be the main end goal. It really wasn't. It's really interesting to see a huge cast of characters, from Mr. Blossom to Mr. Orange, and then you saw, you know, Oki in the village, and there's a small little guy who joined you named Isun in the game. You get to see where he's from and in part of the game, and that whole thing was interesting. And it's just, everything's so beautiful, and you can backtrack through the game, and you'll want to do this to go and get treasures and stray beads and things like that, just to see what's going on. And it's always a good idea to get praise. Praise is the main way you can upgrade your God, I guess, if you will, in this game. You use praise to increase your health, your ink pots for using your brush techniques, your astral pouch, which allows you to revive once you die once in the game. You lose all of your health. I think the max astral pouches you can have are 2 or 3 or 4, and you can also use it for there's something else, I can't think of it. Oh, to increase your money bag, essentially. You can hold more money. There are different techniques you can buy, different god techniques, whether it's something just like sidestepping or something to help like Golden Fury with Demon Fangs, or weapon specific combos. There's a lot of things you can do in the game. It actually does have a lot for you to backtrack and go through and try and get. You know, you don't think about it until you're talking about it. And I've already played the game like 4 times, so for me, it's just like natural to do all of these things. But when you're first playing it, you might not realize how many options you actually do have to play through the game and to just go and do. None of these things are necessary. I think the only thing you actually have to buy is the double jump because of the story. But other than that, it's kind of all optional, and it's just, I can't say anything more about it, really. It's just a really fun and good game. To go back to the negatives, if I had to say one thing, it's that once you beat the game, the replay value, I guess, might not be as good, because you already know the whole story, you already know how to beat all the bosses, and especially because you're overpowered, they might not really be that much of a threat to you until the middle of the game, roughly, because you'll have any weapons you bought or obtained through the game, minus the last set of weapons, I believe, you'll have automatically. You'll have enough golden dust to power up those weapons. You'll have all of your health, all of your other upgrades, so really nothing will really be an issue for you unless you let it be an issue for you, you know? And even if you unequipped all your strong weapons, you still probably will have like more health than you need, so there's really no difficulty in that. I'm not sure if there's a way to make it more difficult. I personally never really dabbled in that, so there might be a way for someone to make it more difficult, but personally, I've never found it. You get interesting things when you restart the game, but I never really used any of them. The one thing, if you absolutely want it to be the easiest game you've ever played, get all the stray beads, because once you get the string of beads, you essentially become invincible. You endlessly can restore ink pots, and I believe I can't remember if it's just your health or your astral pouches or something, but you essentially cannot lose. It is ridiculous. I'm not sure if it actually is possible to die when you have the string of beads, but a friend of mine told me that he never did and he didn't think it was possible, so I just recently beat the game with the whole string of beads, but I have not actually gone into battle or have done anything like that to test that out, so it is what it is. Another negative is that there isn't really any voice acting in the game. Personally, that did not bother me that much. I am used to the way the game was played, and it is what it is. But my boyfriend, who was watching me at the time, it bothered him quite a bit. The characters, they have almost like Animal Crossing-esque voices. For instance, when you talk to someone, they'll be like, wah-ja wah 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 wah, wah-ja wah 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 wah. That's literally what they sound like. And you know, for me, I don't care. I'm used to it. I play Animal Crossing, so everything is high-pitched and creepy and crazy. But also, I've replayed this game several times. To me, it just isn't anything. But I know that can bother several people, so I just wanted to bring it up as a negative because that can be seen as a negative. Personal negative for me is that they didn't play the song Reset at the very end of the game when the credits are rolling. Initially in the original game, the song Reset would play and I sobbed my eyes out and it was very emotional. Instead, I guess as a trade-off, in the middle of the final boss there is a cutscene and I sobbed my eyes out and they played the instrumental version of Reset. So I guess I'm a big fucking baby, but that was a really emotional scene for me, and I had a good cry today because I beat it today. So let's see if I'm emotionally drained later because I sobbed my eyes out to a song that made me sob. God, I don't even remember how many years ago it was at this point. Too many. I'm not even that old yet, and this game's been remade like 4 times in my lifetime. 3 or 4 or 5 times. Like, are you kidding me? The only other issue I can think of personally for me is that sometimes the controls can be a little wonky. I know that sometimes when I'm trying to make jumps, I can really misjudge the distance because of the way everything looks and the camera is angling itself, and even when you try and change it, sometimes it's like stubborn and stuck in place. When I was fighting the final boss, there is a small section of it where you have to do some jumping, and I remember because of the way the camera was angled, I really couldn't get a good look of where I had to jump and how it looked, so I would always end up missing it. And that happens several times just throughout the game, not just in the final boss. There's several parts of the game where you have to do some major jumping, and the camera either doesn't listen to you or what's going on screen can be kind of chaotic, and so it really can mess your flow up and you might not know where you're going at any point in time. And it's just a little concerning. So, I mean, it is what it is, but ultimately, those are all the flaws I found in it. There may be more flaws. Some people might hate tons of things about this game, but personally, I've always loved this game, and I'm not gonna say that I think it's perfect. I know it has its flaws, even ones I haven't mentioned. It's just that for me, it's such a fun and easy game to play that I really don't see it for its flaws. And yeah, a lot of things about it can get annoying at times, especially if you've already played the game and you are now replaying the game. But like I've said, for me, they don't really play a major role, and I don't really even think about it most of the time. So it kind of is what it is. What did you think of Okami if you played it? If you haven't played it, I definitely recommend that you try it. There are a number of people out there that do way better reviews than I do because I just kind of casually do it just to talk about my experience with the game. If you want to watch someone else's review on it, go for it. Personally, I think it's an amazing game. I think it's definitely worth picking up, whether it's on the Switch, the PS2, the PS3, or the PS4, or the Wii. I really don't know about the Wii though, but definitely everything else, I think it's totally worth picking up and buying. You don't have to be like me, buy it on like 3 separate systems, but I just really love the game. So, like I said, let me know what you thought of Okami in the comments below, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!